Welcome to Notes from the Messy Middle. I'm Erin Gregory, storyteller, business owner, wife, and mom of 3. If you've ever found yourself stuck between where you started and where you hope to be, you're in the right place. My hope is that you'll hear your own story in these conversations and feel inspired, because the best progress happens right in the messy middle. Welcome back, everybody. It's Erin Gregory, and today I'm thrilled to introduce you to somebody who has been an essential part of my creative process over the last several years. My editor and colleague, Christie Dawson of Dogwood and Quill. Christie's a strategic communicator, writer, and editor who has walked alongside countless leaders and has helped a number of creatives shape their stories. Christie, welcome to Notes from the Messy Middle. It's a pleasure to have you.
Well, thank you, Erin. I'm delighted to be here with you today. I appreciate being on the list.
Now, you and I first met when we worked for the Department of Veterans Affairs. Tell me a little bit about your journey and how you landed there.
The short answer to that is Mr. Harvey Johnson. You'll have to get him on your podcast as well. Was assigned by the Secretary of Veterans Affairs during the Biden administration to implement 16, what became 17 executive orders and one presidential memorandum. And in order to accomplish that on behalf of the entire Department of Veterans Affairs, he needed to step up and get a little help with the messaging and mostly the capturing the story of the journey map. And that's where you and I began collaborating. You came in with a group that was hired through a contract to help us implement these executive orders, and then you and I teamed up in capturing what was being done and how we were doing it and how Mr. Johnson was going to talk about it, because we also had to show our work. We had to report to the White House, and it was it was a fun undertaking. And those of us that are federal employees are civil servants, and we're loyal to the United States of America, not to a particular president. I did see a lot of our work when the new administration came in January, change in that space. But it was an interesting place to finish my federal career, which was yesterday, by the way. Today is my first day of retirement, and I'm excited to be celebrating it with you.
And thank you for being here. Congratulations as well on your retirement. Now, you've called yourself a career staffer more than once. How did your career begin?
I was the receptionist on the Senate Small Business Committee. It was chaired by a senator from my home state of Arkansas. His name was Dale Bumpers, and I was really able to hone my craft when I was a young person just out of college, working for him and being around some really bright people that were on his staff, and it raised my game. And while I was there, I went to graduate school at night at Georgetown University and got a master's in English literature. I learned how to move back and forth between voice and between audience. So I learned congressional relations. I learned how to advocate on behalf of a state institution of higher ed, to the federal government, and then, had advocacy jobs throughout most of my career until I ended up for a while at the Justice Department, working for the Marshal Service and Congressional Affairs. I worked for Interpol Washington, and then thought, during the pandemic, what do I really want to do? I think this speechwriter job looks pretty good at VA. As I got a little older, a little more seasoned in my career, it became clear to me that I was going to be able to be in a more advisory role. And that's when you and I met, when we were working in the Office of Resolution Management. So I spent the summer setting up my own strategic communications consultancy, Dogwood and Quill.
Yeah, that's so great. I had a similar journey last year. So for our listeners who are considering starting their own shop, what would you recommend as their first step?
I got on Squarespace and I reserved my domain and I filed with the state of Arkansas for my LLC and I reserved the name and there were no conflicts. And then I got on Squarespace and started watching the tutorials about how to design the website. And my friend John interrupts me, goes, and then you called a millennial. And then I called a millennial. That's exactly what I did. I called Aaron within an hour and said, hey, I'm not like able to do this. And it was something that Aaron has so much skill and capability and has felt I had seen your own website, Aaron, that you had designed for Aaron Gregory. And, it's so engaging and it's so beautiful and it's so attractive and welcoming. And I thought, I wonder who did that for her. And then I thought, of course she did that for herself. And it's an amazing product. And I wanted to imitate it. And then I think we were able to come up with something that works well for what I'm trying to do.
Christie, if everybody who ended up in the situation that you did took the next step like you did by creating a logo and figuring out your brand and building a website, can you imagine how much better off they would be? So you really got yourself out of that messy middle. But our listeners don't know yet how you got there. And part of that has to do with when we were working at VA together. And there was kind of this looming awareness of a potential administration change. And I left before that change happened. But you stayed and you had to experience everything that followed, including up to this point. Tell me about it.
When things started kind of unraveling, it was really even before the election. It was at the beginning of calendar year 24, heading into the election. And some of the things that we were being directed to work on by President Biden were then, becoming conflicted within the existing, Congress. And because of the fact that our office had been given those particular executive orders, then a lot of the leadership was called into question. But we're all good soldiers and we're all, seasoned professionals who do the work that we're assigned. If it's legal, if it's within legal boundaries, I mean, there are different policy priorities for every administration. And as a civil servant, one is required to, do the work at hand. And that's really kind of what I did in 2024 is as people were being forced out or retiring or resigning or doing whatever, I just continued forward supporting, my bosses who were coming in and trying to keep us, on the path forward. And we were creating these gentle, welcoming policies that were designed to include everybody, not exclude anybody. I think they might have had the unintended consequence of making some people feel excluded, but that's something that I'll think about another day, is how do we open things up and what language do we use that makes it understandable that it's for all Americans. All men are created equal. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, that's what we all want for one another. And that was really the goal that we kept at the center and at the focus of the policies that we were trying to create. They were not designed to exclude one group or the other. In fact, and you can vouch for this, I would strongly advise Mr. Johnson, I was his direct report. I was on his staff, to stay away from any particular affinity group, but just to, that this was really about providing, equity for veterans within VA and for the employees who worked at VA in the service of those veterans. And the idea that was underneath all of it seemed like a simple idea to me. I don't see how it's controversial that if employees feel protected and well cared for, and that they're being respected at work, and they feel safe at work, then they are going to provide the best possible care for the veterans. They're going to provide the best benefit services. And that was really what undergirded, everything that we did. But I think most of that has been removed. I had to then spend several weeks undoing a lot of the stuff that I'd spent 3 years writing. But that's how it goes when you work for the federal government. I don't know where we go from here. I think a lot of people are leaving. I have heard the secretary proclaim in public spaces that he was going to fire or push out through attrition or encourage to retire 83,000 people. I don't know if he was able to get close to that number. So I think there are going to be more layoffs within VA. I don't really know about other federal departments. As a professional messaging person, as a communications professional, I pay attention to the way sentences are constructed when leaders and when executives say them, because a lot of times they're designed through kind of the dark art that you and I know how to weave to sort of sound better than they and to connote a meaning without actually saying something explicitly. And a lot of that, the new secretary's sentences went like this: my goal is to serve all of the veterans in America with the best possible access to benefits and services that they are guaranteed because of their military service. Therefore, in order to accomplish that, we are firing and removing 83,000 people from the Department of Veterans Affairs. And those two ideas seemed so in conflict to me, but he kept saying it. And I thought, well, I mean, I have enough time in service that I can retire. I wasn't ready financially to retire, but I feel fortunate that I had the option, because I think a lot of people are sort of stuck right now.
I'm sure you're right. It's terrible what's happening to all of the federal employees this year. What do you make of it?
Since the 80s, that that public servants, that federal employees don't do anything, that they call us the parasite class, and that we're all just earning a paycheck and not doing anything, and we have no oversight. And the man who owns the rocket ship company was just making up stuff. He said that there were tens of thousands of dummy positions on the rolls of people who were long dead, who were taking salaries. And it's just not true. I mean, every dime of our budget was justified. We had congressional oversight. I was given a performance plan every year that I had to not only create myself, but create with my boss. I was given an extensive mid-year review and a review at the end, and they knew exactly when I was working and what I was doing. And I turned in my work on time. I tried to provide excellence. I was proud to be working for the United States of America. That was not something that felt shameful for me. I chose that career on purpose because I wanted to be of service. That narrative had gotten out there and was so strongly believed. And the dissonance between what is true and the professional workforce that is the federal service and what they were saying about us, it was vast. And, the media stepped into the chasm and they tried to sort it out, but we're in our own echo chambers now with the media, to the extent that it's really hard to get any sort of other information across that divide. I'm in favor of my country functioning well. I'm in favor of us all coming together and crafting strong policies that help the government to do some of the things that we've asked our federal government to do that is not being done in other areas of the country and of the economy.
Yeah, that's a lot to handle. How are you doing?
Well, I'm having to process it one day at a time, but I'm writing about it, right? And I'm working with people who are trying to make sense of when things go wrong in their own lives. I'm helping a couple of nonprofit organizations that are trying to serve families that are struggling with grief. I have another friend who lost a son, and one of the things that she and I talk about is how you walk through grief and trauma. How does that look? How do you come out the other side? What are the mechanisms that you use when things are happening that you can't control? And so I'm in the middle of processing that right now. But in the short term, it feels like everything I ever worked on from the time I was a young congressional staffer all the way through my public policy advocacy in the public policy space for higher education, for law enforcement, for disability employment. All of these things just got shredded and undone within weeks. But I think you can maybe delete stuff off a website. I think you can shred a piece of paper and destroy the record of something being done. But that's very different from really changing hearts and minds. And, I think that a lot of us that want to figure out gentle, welcoming policies that invite everybody in.
I couldn't agree more. Well, Christie, it has been such a pleasure talking with you today. Thank you for sharing your story with us, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll talk to you next week. Thank you for today.
And if folks are looking to connect with Christie Dawson, you can find her on LinkedIn, as well as her company, Dogwood and Quill. And you can also visit dogwoodquill.com. Thank you for listening to today's conversation. I hope it gave you encouragement for your own messy middle. If you'd like more stories like this, you can find me on Substack and social media at Erin Gregory Creative, or visit my website at eringregorycreative.com. Until next time, thanks for joining us in the messy middle.